In this episode, you'll discover how the labs and tests you've had at your doctor's office may not be giving you the full picture of your fertility potential, how functional testing is personalized to you in finding the root cause of your fertility struggles, and three functional tests that can be beneficial for giving you insight as to why you're not getting or staying pregnant. Plus, three actionable steps for you to start cultivating foundations to support optimal fertility today. Welcome to the Finally Get Pregnant Naturally podcast, the podcast helping women identify the real reasons you haven't conceived or stayed pregnant so you and your partner can finally grow the family of your dreams. I'm your host, Dr. Katie Wood. Let's dive in, shall we? In this episode, I'll be talking with Hannah Davis, a registered dietitian practicing integrative functional testing, as well as a certified meditation teacher and spiritual psychology coach. She's a functional nutrition practitioner at Pivot Nutrition Coaching, a virtual nutrition coaching program helping men and women specializing in functional testing, PCOS, fertility, blood sugar management, gut health, weight loss, and more. We'll be discussing functional testing and how this can support your fertility and ability to get pregnant, even if you've been struggling. So, welcome, Hannah. I'm looking forward to our conversation today.
Thanks for having me.
So, some of the listeners might not be familiar with functional testing and what exactly that is. I feel like that term is thrown around quite a bit these days, especially on social media, but maybe someone doesn't have a full understanding of what that is. So, I would love to hear your take on what is functional testing and how does this differ from the conventional testing that people are accustomed to getting, like at your typical regular doctor's office, maybe at your OBGYN, and even with fertility specialists as well.
Yeah. I'll just start by saying I think conventional lab testing is could definitely be helpful. What we've seen in practice or what a lot of my clients start out with is just conventional lab testing. Maybe they'll get some blood work done to look at nutrient status and hormones, things like that. But functional lab testing really allows us to uncover what's actually happening inside of your body, whether it's imbalances in your microbiome, signs of inflammation, or hormone dysregulation. This data really allows us to create a more tailored plan that targets the root cause of your symptoms rather than just addressing surface level issues.
Absolutely. And functional testing is something that I do as well. And like you said, I think that conventional testing is, there's nothing wrong with it, but it is just scratching the surface a little bit. They just don't necessarily take that like under the hood, so to say, look at what is going on. And a lot of times it's just very short piece of time, right? Maybe you get labs drawn on cycle day 3, whereas other things like maybe a Dutch test is actually looking at your entire cycle and things like that. So
Yeah.
I love that. And in terms of functional testing, you mentioned how it shows what is actually going on underneath inside the body. So to me, that's finding like the root cause of what is going on. So if you've been struggling to get pregnant, a lot of times people are told your labs look normal, right? Unexplained infertility. And that's probably one of the more frustrating diagnoses because you don't really have anything to work with. But I think that this is where functional testing can come into play. And I'd love to just hear your thoughts on that and maybe things that you've seen with your clients where things looked normal and then you did some tests with them and you actually found that, hey, this is what's going on underneath.
Yeah. And that's so true. That's a really common pain point of my client being told, like, hey, everything looks normal. Maybe it's you just need to relax or something like that. And women often come to me after trying everything like elimination diets, random supplements, lots of Googling, and they're just exhausted and discouraged, or they just feel like, hey, I'm doing all of the right things and I'm still not seeing results. So that's when we pause, just simplify and then look at the root cause. And that's really where the functional lab testing comes in. I love running a Dutch test, I think, to start. That's one of my favorite functional lab tests to run.
Yeah, I'd love to know your go-to functional tests for your clients, specifically for fertility, and why. What is some of the information that you're gathering from these tests?
Yeah. Usually it's like a good starting place would be a Dutch test. So Dutch stands for dried urine testing for comprehensive hormones. I used to think it was like of Dutch. So it's actually like an acronym, but it's a very unique way to look at hormones because traditionally before this test was available, you would have to rely on blood work for hormones and saliva for cortisol, which was okay, but not great. When we look at urine, we're not just looking at the production of hormones, but the way they're being broken down throughout the body and metabolized. So, for example, maybe someone might take just a conventional blood test and they'll see something like their progesterone is low or estrogen is high. Whereas when we're doing a Dutch test, we're actually able to look at the metabolic pathways of each of these sex hormones. So it's going to tell me more root causes than just like looking at the blood test alone. So I'll give you an example. Maybe looking at estrogen metabolism as a nutrition professional, I may see 3 clients with estrogen dominance, but their root causes are all going to be different based on how that estrogen is actually being metabolized. Or that estrogen, high estrogen piece might be why, like, it's a, why we're seeing like low progesterone. So it's not as black and white. And really, it helps us get a lot more specific, a lot more personalized, and helps us answer some questions, which I think would have been left unanswered if we were just looking at blood work alone. I also like to run, have you heard of HTMA testing? Yeah, sometimes a lot of my clients like to pair that with the Dutch testing because a lot of times the root causes of these hormones imbalances could be caused by mineral imbalances or maybe inflammation. So like sometimes my clients might want to look at like a GI map, so do some stool testing as well. So I would say those are like the
Okay.
that I run, yeah.
Okay. Yeah, I'd love for you to dive a little bit deeper into the HTMA, maybe explain what that is and what that's looking at specifically, because some of the listeners might not be as familiar with that one.
Yeah, some of my clients who know that the root cause of their hormone balances or gut issues are stemming from long-term chronic stress. This test is a great way to dive deeper with this and have a greater understanding of their body's unique stress pattern. So I'll utilize this test most often in practice. So an HTMA, it stands for hair tissue mineral analysis. And it's a pretty non-invasive test. We're just using about a teaspoon amount of hair. And it's not looking at minerals again like in a traditional way through blood work where that's more in circulation outside of the cell and it's more of a snapshot of what's going on with those minerals like the day you take the blood test. But an HTMA is looking, it's analyzing the tissues, so it's telling us more more of like a 3 to 6 month picture of what's been going on, how the body has been using these minerals on a more cellular level, and not just like whether these minerals are high or low, but like actually how the body is actually utilizing those minerals, which are so important for thousands of enzymatic reactions in the body, having a lot to do with hormones, nervous system, adrenals, thyroid, digestion, like all of the things. Really get a lot of info from that one.
Yeah, I've actually had an HTMA done. I did it actually about a year ago. And it is really interesting. And just something that maybe you can touch more on is a lot of times when we are struggling to get pregnant, we're doing research on the internet or we're taking supplements that on the surface seems like they helped someone else get pregnant. But what I learned with the practitioner, because I'm not certified in HTMA or anything like that, but with the woman I worked with, that when you're taking things in isolation, it can throw off other minerals in your body. So I had been taking magnesium for quite a while, magnesium glycinate, because I absolutely love that supplement. But my sodium and my potassium were off because I was taking it for so long and I was taking it in isolation. And then I think another one was copper. Copper was off as well. I can't remember what it was, but birth control, I feel like she was talking about in terms of that. So if you want to geek out a little bit on any of those things, I think that could be helpful.
Absolutely. Yeah. That's funny you say that because I did an HTMA on myself several years ago. And then I just took one recently because I was curious. Usually I'll do it like every time I have like a significant life event and I want to see what like the stress pattern on my body and what minerals would be the most nourishing and grounding to me during those seasons. But that's funny you say that about the magnesium because I'm always shocked to see that my magnesium levels look pretty optimal. And I've heard so many times like how important magnesium is for nervous system, for hormone balance. It's really good for like sleep, right? So everyone's just throwing magnesium glycinate at everyone. And while that could be very helpful for, I would say most people are deficient in magnesium, that's not the supplement for me. So I don't need that one. That's interesting that you say that. Yeah. But yeah, copper plays a pretty big role too. We see some imbalances with copper from hormonal birth control or a copper IUD. Yeah. And that one's important because so copper is really involved in our mitochondria and the ability to make cellular energy. It's also really important for that thyroid hormone conversion from T4 to active T3, and it helps keep iron inside of the blood cells, so it's not, like, going into the tissues. So copper is a really important one, especially we're talking about fertility and cellular energy. Our mitochondria needs to be in really tip-top shape so that we can actually manufacture proper levels of sex hormones. So that's often a missing piece, I think, that's not getting talked about regularly. What was your copper doing? Was it high, low?
I think it might have been on the higher side because I had previously been on birth control for about 13 years. I took the test, gosh, it would have been 5, 6 years after I've already been off of birth control. But still, yeah, I think it was a little high, and we also have well water, so
Okay.
the manganese, I think, was high as well, and even though we don't drink the water, you're still showering in it,
Yeah.
and so that's being absorbed by the skin. Like, there's just so many things and individualized factors in your life, which is why this personalized functional testing is so important because it can't be a one size fits all approach.
And that copper being high, that's actually a loss, like, it's being pulled into the tissues, likely, or it's you have a high amounts of copper in your tissues from the IUD, which could disrupt iron regulation, and iron plays such a big role with maintaining blood flow and oxygen to your ovaries,
Mhm.
right? Yeah, it is so fascinating, and it's not like this cookie cutter thing. I like how the HTMA is looking more at patterns, and it's so individualized, right? I'm not a fan of just influencers do this, but now I'm starting to see more practitioners do this online where they're just, like, throwing supplements at people without knowing their medical history, their labs, their relationship with food, you know, their
Mhm.
story. Yeah.
Absolutely. So, if someone has been struggling to get pregnant and maybe they've already done some labs and tests with their doctor, maybe even their fertility specialist. Because I get this a lot, especially in my DMs, where I'll ask them, "What have you done? Have you had any labs done, tests done? What have you looked into?" And they'll say, "I've done everything. I've looked into everything." But really, they've only looked at what Western medicine, conventional medicine look into, which, in my opinion, is very surface level. So, what would you say to someone who has been struggling and they feel like they've done everything, but obviously, I think there are other options left for them to look into?
Yeah, yeah. I would say functional lab testing, it can be a helpful tool, but I like to encourage people to first just start with a lot of more like foundational things. Maybe someone might think they're doing all of the right things, but and that can be confusing too. We hear a lot of conflicting things and advice online. So I would start with like why ovulation matters. Ovulation's more than just making a baby. It's a sign of overall hormonal health. Even if someone isn't trying to conceive, having regular ovulation supports mood, metabolism, bone density, and your cardiovascular health. So I would also be talking to this person about nourishing the body to signal safety. The body needs to, I'm sure you've talked about this a lot before, how the body needs to feel safe and nourished to ovulate. I would be looking at whether or not this person's eating enough. Because under eating, whether it's unintentional, right? Or maybe intentional, like maybe they're actively trying to lose weight, even that alone can be enough stress on the body to not be making optimal amounts of hormones. So I would say under eating, stress, and inflammation can all suppress that signal of safety to the body. So I would encourage regular meals, making sure we're getting enough calories, and also with that under that umbrella, making sure we're getting the right balance of macronutrients, of carbs, proteins, fats. And then obviously that's going to be promoting blood sugar balance. And I know we've talked about that before too, because one of the biggest disruptors of ovulation would, especially in PCOS, is blood sugar instability. And then I would be talking about regulating the nervous system and also tracking your cycle is important too. So I like to teach clients how to track ovulation through cervical mucus changes. We can certainly use ovulation predictor kits. Yeah. And then if you feel like you're doing all those things, then I would say functional testing would be needed just for some deeper insights to move the needle.
Hmm. Yeah, absolutely. I think having those fertility foundations is really important, no matter which route you're taking, conventional or more like holistic functional testing. I think that you want to make sure that you have those in place because no matter what, that's going to support a healthy fertility, getting out in nature, sunlight. There's just so many things that I feel like we can either easily become disconnected from or just like we don't even realize that, oh, I'm not even getting outside enough in my day and getting that
Wow.
sunlight for my circadian rhythm and all of those things.
Yes. Yeah. There's just so much we can do with like food, lifestyle, nervous system support to just guide it back.
Yeah. So I know you have a freebie for the listeners, a PCOS 7-day meal plan, which, in my opinion, even if you don't have PCOS, I think that this could be a helpful tool because it's going to help regulate your blood sugar, which is important for everyone, whether you have PCOS, whether you struggle with insulin sensitivity or not. So why don't you tell us a little bit about that?
Yeah, over at Pivot, we've put together a freebie. It's a 7-day PCOS diet plan. So even if you don't have PCOS, I still feel like everyone could benefit from a blood sugar friendly, balanced meal plan. And I'm not a big fan of meal plans. I like at Pivot, we like to not really tell people what to eat, but teach them how to eat. But it's a really good place to start and just helping you like learn what a balanced plate looks like. And this has some flexible tools and guidance and support in there. Yeah. So just click on the link in the show notes. And I believe that's also on our website as well.
Amazing, which that link will be in the show notes as well. Okay. If you could leave 3 simple action steps for the listeners, what would those be?
Okay, that's a great question. I would just start with some real food strategies. So the first step is just to improve the quality of your food choices. Maybe that might mean removing inflammatory oils or added sugars, lots of processed carbohydrates, and replace them with more whole, real food. And Just the goal would be to eat a sufficient amount of carbohydrates to promote ovulation. So I'd be focusing on whole, real food sources like starchy vegetables like potatoes, beets, squash, corn, and then whole fruit, hopefully like 1 to 3 pieces of fruit per day, and unprocessed whole grains like legumes, if tolerated, like rice, oats, beans, lentils, and then lifestyle strategies, exercise. It's a crucial tool in repairing insulin sensitivity and managing blood sugar levels. So I'd first focus on increasing daily movement, like tracking your steps. And then maybe next, you maybe consider adding in more resistance training, since these have been shown to have the most metabolic improvements. And then, of course, stress management. I think that's a very broad thing, but it's a key piece of hormonal balance since adrenal health has the ability to impact the function of your sex hormones. So I would evaluate your sources of stress, reduce what you can, maybe build in some stress relieving activities daily. And of course, sleep is a big one too.
Amazing. Thank you. Yeah, those are great lifestyle and dietary changes to make to support overall fertility. And where can the audience find you to learn more and connect with you?
You can find me in my main online, like social media would be Instagram. You can find me at Rooted with Hannah. And then you can also find me over at the pivotnutritioncoaching.com website if you were interested in some specialty labs. We do offer functional lab testing with a consultation, or we also have coaching packages as well.
Beautiful. Amazing. So, all those links will be in the show notes. And thank you so much for your time and being here today, Hannah, and sharing your expertise with the listeners.
Thank you for having me.